And now I am so excited to share with you the bio of a wonderful young woman who is with us today. Her name is Katie Gray, and Katie is the daughter of her immigrant father, Mohammed Nwano. And Katie, please correct me if you can. Who came to the U.S. from India, and her mother, Annette Gray. Katie is a singer, an activist, and an inspirational speaker devoted to helping people connect with feelings, presence, and heart awareness. She has received various recognition for her music and appearances on various late-night shows, and she has collaborated with many musicians on stage. And she has been a supporter of the 1 Billion Rising organization. If you're not aware of that organization, please check them out. She joined Eve Ensler for a tour of India, where she spoke and sang out against violence and abuse towards women. Katie, I turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you so much. What a wonderful welcome. I wasn't expecting that.
You're awesome.
What's amazing about this whole gathering is that the love is building and we feel like, oh great, when this is done, let's go hang out together. We'll go have lunch, right? Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing in bringing us together and helping facilitate this incredible gathering. Thank you, everyone.
Katie, I want to interrupt you because we love you and we want to share how much we love you as well.
And for all your support, you've been an incredible interviewer and leading many of the conversations.
Oh, I love you. I love you both so much, and it is mutual. And I really appreciate what you were sharing about the dynamic reflection of what non-duality is, and how it's not just a physical sense. It really brings light to where we have become separated from one another and separated from ourselves through trauma and through almost where we've been scared out of presence. And so just bringing the light to where there is fear and bringing us back to a place of love, because that love is what brings us back together, that trust and that connection. So thank you for the content. Everything has been so powerful and moving. And what's maybe the most exciting thing is that it's not me that I am excited to, I am not the one that we are here to talk to. I mean, I am, but Patricia June Vickers, who I'm introducing right now, she is a profound human being. And what's so amazing about her is that she may not be someone that's in the limelight, that's someone you've heard of, or you've read a bunch of her books and you've taken her courses. She's someone that is actively on the field of creating change through her work with working with trauma. Before I introduce what she does, it's very important to acknowledge that Patricia she's an indigenous woman, and she is joining us from the Haida Gwaii of the BC, Canada area. And she comes from a long lineage. She is indigenous, where her father's mother, her mother is from British heritage, but her father's mother is from the region and people of Tsimtshian, which is near Haida Gwaii, and her father's father is from Hiltsuk. And I reached out to Patricia because it's so important that we non-Indigenous recognize that the names are different, the regions are different. For thousands and thousands of years, there's been a spirit and history and understanding of connection. And for me to just say she's from BC, Canada I don't want to insult her. I want to acknowledge that she comes from a long lineage of this being her home and her family. She is the head of mental health services, where she develops and manages trauma training programs for Indigenous people on Haida Gwaii. And she recently released her book, Singing to the Darkness, which I am so excited to read. It's a compilation of monologues and meditations. And it actually includes a foreword by Gabor, who we just heard from. So Patricia, I am so excited. I almost want to cry because I was so moved. We spoke yesterday and just fell in love. And she's so, there she is. She's so amazing. So Patricia, thank you so much for joining us and for being who you are and being such a powerful, not just the talk of creating change, but the walk of creating change, and the courage that it's taken for you to lean into your own shadows and find that fearlessness so that you can salvage the hope and love so as to guide others. You're just
It's good to be with you again. Yeah.
Well, I want to say that the way through is in. That is something that you have blessed us with, this saying of the way through is in. And being a woman, being someone that has been through traumas, that has been through the various levels of being a minority, you have found a profound strength and resilience. And yesterday you mentioned that as hope, as understanding the power of where our hearts can lead us through the shadows. And I wanted this to also be a conversation. We spoke about this not needing to be rehearsed, but you just having space to speak your wisdom, what's coming through you. So stage.
Thank you. I'd like to start by acknowledging everyone that's in this enormous circle today. And even though where I'm from, it's not really about circles, it's about the feast hall and being clustered into clans. So everybody's in their own clan today. And so I send out my prayers to everyone who's here at this gathering, and for healing and peace in families. And I come with both the suffering and the resource and the love of ancestors on both sides. And the many teachers, that we have along the way, don't we?
Yes. Patricia, in your work, and I say work because it's part of what you do, is developing these training programs and helping people. What we're seeing happen in this large scale, as if all of the buds on the tree have opened up and the seeds of trauma are releasing. I think for a lot of us, probably everyone, whether they realize it or not, they've dealt with crisis in their life. And I think even just the act of being born is a painful, stretching, uncomfortable experience. And have been through this, been through various levels and experiences of trauma. In your understanding, how do you foresee the path opening itself up for where the ray of light of hope comes in, where we lean into, away from our fear and lean into the connection and into the trust? Yesterday you had mentioned the importance of preparing yourself and cleansing yourself of the other emotions so that you can find a more direct route. I was hoping you could speak to us about that.
I think when we have, whether it's when we were being carried by our mother or birthed, or those first years in childhood, or we're older and we encounter something that we just can't understand, a violence that we can't comprehend, that it impacts us, and all the beliefs that we form. So I think it's almost like I'll say life is like a midden, and there are all these layers. And I really like what you said about the rays. And here on the Northwest Coast, we have big houses, and they're still along the coast, and that's where a lot of the traditional songs are sung, the ancestral songs. And in the top of the roof is a smoke hole. And if it's during the day, when the light shines through, you can see the rays of light. And so when you said that, I was thinking about it and how important ceremony and ritual is. So for me, I'm only seeing now as a grandmother, when I look back into my childhood, that the ways in which I connected, I liked what was said earlier, that non-duality is about connecting, and how I connected with, I was in Gitxsan territory, and the creek and the beaver pond and the blueberry bushes and just the beauty of nature. And I think that sometimes we can't see it because we're stuck in the layers. And it takes someone to help us to see where there was hope, where we didn't know that that's what it was because we were immature. But we felt it in our bodies. And so I think in working with people, that's always the most important thing, is to be able to reconnect with the ways in which we naturally went for hope. We went for connection.
Wow. As you're sharing that, I too am seeing a vision. You know, I see this long house, and I see the smoke and what smoke symbolizes and how smoke can block the hole. But then what is the light that's coming through? Something so much bigger and greater than of what we create and what could potentially block that hole. But the light comes through the smoke. And wouldn't you say there's a beauty to that divine bigger presence of light when it comes through the smoke and it creates a dance? You know, yesterday you had mentioned to me that our addictions are what are seemable weaknesses, or they are undesirable, yet those are these opportunities to understand ourselves better and to not discard them, to not discard anything as a problem or an undesirable, to not discard the smoke as what's blocking the light, but to let the light come through regardless. And you know, as you're I really appreciate your perspective of not judging the what has happened to us, but to recognize that as part of the whole of what brought us to this moment.
Yes. And being raised with, my mother was of British ancestry. Both of her parents were from England, and she went through missionary training. And so shame and guilt were a really big part of how, you know, what I said to her when I was young was, you were brainwashed. And because she was so paranoid about so many things that she didn't understand. But you know, we all have this conditioning in childhood. Some we recognize, and other conditioning we don't. And I think that when I look at how we come to a place of integrating it all, it takes that gentle kindness. So, you know, when I was younger, I had that harshness that went with what I would call religious addiction. And I call it that because I went to religion to give me some sense of value and worth and order from chaos and from life that I didn't understand and I couldn't make meaning. So, you know, now I understand how important that grandparent loving kindness is. It, for myself, I have 4 adult children and I have 8 grandchildren that I absolutely love and adore. So, so it's wonderful, and I'm grateful to be at this place where I have this understanding, because I have my own father who died not coming to this place. So, and that's partly what has me doing the work. And as you mentioned as well, it's our own suffering really that brings us into the work when we find the help.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. When you, it occurs to me too, I see, when you speak, I see visions, and I see everything kind of displays itself in a picture, and I see the importance of ritual and connection, and just the way you said, when you were turning to religion for a sense of purpose and connection, probably maybe a sense of safety and reassurance, a sense of belonging and reassurance, a tether. When I think of how for so many thousands of years we would be prepared for crisis. Crisis has been happening since creation, whether natural or, tribes going against one another, whatever it is, illnesses. But the importance of that practice of ritual and turning within and leaning into the force greater than yourself. Those practices, just, you mentioned, your mother's from a British lineage and your father's indigenous from the land there, but how many of us in our deep ancestral lineage from wherever we're from, my father's from India, my mother's has British background similar to your background, but for so long we have leaned into a sense of ritual and connection and prayer and meditation in a way to find that sense of belonging and that tether when we are in the face of crisis or trauma. And I'm curious, if I've heard people say that finding that the ritual and finding your practice, it's different for everyone. It won't necessarily come from your lineage. You may find that someone in India brings you the awareness that you need, though your roots don't come from India. What would you say as far as, because you did mention that there are some Indian teachers that have taught you so much from India, but what would you say as far as people searching for that sense of belonging through a practice, as you have done yourself? Where do we better ourselves when we have forgotten our sense of connection and purpose through ritual and these ancestral ways?
Yeah. I think about, as you're asking this question, that what are they called? In Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths. And the first one being that craving. And what we're talking about is desire. And so it's a certain kind of desire, though, isn't it? It's a desire of wanting to be whole. It's a desire of not wanting to hate or to have resentment. It's a desire to be free. And I think that when we have that, and it's stronger than, I would say, when it was stronger than the hatred I had, that's when that outside power, that outside energy force began to, actually it sent people to me. And I was in Gitsan territory, and because we're matriarchal, everything that was around me wasn't around me in an overt way. So how things were done that people would say are cultural, I didn't know they were until I was in my mid-30s. It was finding out incest I grew up with it, and that my father had also abused my daughters. And so I was raging for some time. And then these women, Gitsan women, came to me and they said, come and take the language. And I'm not Gitsan, but they speak a different dialect of Somalia. And so I did. And then another woman came to me and she said, why don't you come to this feast? Connie, who you knew, Connie Morgan's mother has died, and there'll be a feast. And I hadn't been to one. So I went to my first feast, and I was absolutely blown away. Some part of me knew that ancestral law was a living law and that it was unfolding before me. And what I saw all around me was that kind gentleness and respect. And everyone was organized. There are four tribes in Tsimshian, Gitsan, and Niska territory, and everyone was organized in their 4 tribes and in their houses, a chief for each house. And I just looked at the organization and I was just blown away, because I didn't know that I was conditioned to believe that the incest and the violence was because I was an Indian. And then I began to see as I went into it, and as I followed these women, and what they said that I needed to do, I did. And as I did, what I know now is that the ancestral teachings, which are alive and they sustain us, they hold us, they were guiding me. And one of our teachings was said earlier, and it's that we're connected to all things. It's about having respect for all things, and respect is about that consciousness. It's about living awake. And as I'm hiking up this trail, that everything's alive around me, and I can be with it. I don't have to think, I can just be. So when I came to really know that this is what I was born into, I just wept. It was just overwhelming, because it countered everything that society had told me, really covertly and overtly.
Wow, that is so powerful. I see so much of what you're saying reflecting what's happening now, when the story is being told to us from the media, from the news, from the collective, this voice of how we should be afraid and how we should feel shadowed and retreat, and how there's a bigger voice of connection and liveliness, of awakeness, that in a way you have to let go of the old story, and even the story that you're being inundated with currently, and find the bigger story of life. And would you say that nature is a big part of that, of reconnecting with the earth?
For me, for sure. And as I'm on Haida, I just see it's medicine for the men as they go out and get fish and bring it back and give it away. And the women, as they're preparing, they're getting plant medicines, and they're jarring fish. It's like it's a part, and sometimes we're not really thinking about it. We're just living it. So I think that's the other thing. Another saying that I want to give, that comes from, again, Somalia speaking people, which is the Tsimshian, Niska, and Gitsan, is Sagait Ulam God. And often, especially in a feast, if there's some sort of tension, then a chief might come up and he might say that. And what it is it's like the bell in meditation. It brings our mind back to one heart, one mind. That's what Sakait Gulam Got means. One heart, one mind. And how, as especially the last 7 years, I'm really coming to understand how important that saying is, and why that saying's been said in the feast hall for thousands of years. Because it's a reminder of who we really are.
Connected. Yeah, like our true essence is connection. We are one being. maybe having different experiences, but we are, the reminder is the underlying blanket of connection. Thank you. That is such a big reminder. That's such an important reminder. Patricia, I'm curious, in this experience for you personally, you know, I think when we've, you know, spent 30 years or 20 years or 50 years working through our own trauma and finding answers and pathways and wisdom that can then be shared, maybe we become someone that others seek the answers from, and that allows us to be the provider of guidance and wisdom. And I'm curious, where in this experience over the past few months, where have you found yourself humbled, and not that you don't have the answers, but have you had experiences where you felt humbled by the experience? Maybe you became the student again, you know?
Yeah, I think it actually happens often in small and big ways, but I've really been missing my children and my grandchildren, and my back went out, and I broke my tailbone quite some time ago, and so every once in a while when I'm living life unconsciously, my back goes out. And it's been quite some time. It's been about 14 years and it went out. And it was extremely painful. I asked for help, which I haven't done in the past. 14 years ago, I just basically was a victim to it. And this time I was in conversation with it. And I asked for help, and help came, and then a healer did some visualization with me, and I saw the ball, and that I was inside the ball in the small of my back. And then he asked me to send the positive energy that was around the ball outside of my body, which I did. And then I saw it was my mother, and she died in 95, and that she was this beautiful, soft blue violet light, and she was sending love to me. And that whole session with Tom lasted about 15 minutes. And the next day, which is really unusual, I know the muscle relaxant helped. But the next day I was up and I was walking, and I was doing my morning practice and was sitting quietly when in my root chakra, I saw a resentment towards my mother. It was just so deep in my body. And I just felt it in my heart, and said my apologies and let it go. And it was amazing how that also connected with being female, and how there's so many ways through advertising that would say what it is to be female so they can sell their products to us. And it's not been an easy thing for me to understand what it is, because of the multiple rapes in childhood. My femaleness was distorted. So I came to see that my relationship with my mother was my primary, my primary what it is to be female. And so letting go of the resentment, letting go of everything was so incredibly powerful. And I can thank my back for leading me into that. Yeah.
Your back, the structure that keeps you walking, forward, that keeps you,
yes,
and with your, keeps you upright.
That's what I was going to say. That keeps me walking upright. Not on my all fours, crawling on the ground, you know. Yeah.
You know, that keeps you moving forward instead of crawling through suffering.
Yeah.
I acknowledge right now, Patricia, how much I appreciate your honesty. I imagine, you know, I've overheard statistics of people being in their homes during this time and how unsafe it is for the children that are a part of domestic violence, because it's increased with addiction rates going up, with people, stress levels, losing work, turning to their substances, and then abuse increasing. I thought a lot about people that are not safe within their homes, and now they're being confined to a place of unsafety. And I just really, really, really honor and appreciate your courage and your lack of ego to be afraid. You're not afraid. You are honest, and that truth, you just being honest about your experiences, and to be so vocal and honest about rape and your childhood, and the shadows that you see are not shadows. They're part of what brought you to this moment to share light. I just really appreciate your authenticity, because you give everyone else permission to look at that differently within themselves and more courageously be with the truth. So thank you just for being who you are.
I think I like what this is titled, because I think as we do go into it, no matter how horrifying, when we make that decision to go into it, the supernatural will always be with us. It is always with us. And that's what I'm learning. You know, it changed my brain, what I went through in childhood. I've been through 2 marriages, and I carried a lot of rage, and it keeps that past that I can't change as a mother, keeps me humble. You know, it isn't that I punish myself any longer with how I was, because I understand myself in a way that I didn't when I was in the midst of it all, facing powerlessness. You know, as parents, that's what we do. We face powerlessness over and over again. So I think that when we choose to go into it, it's like, you know, it makes life easier in the sense of ease, not easier in the sense that it's not a challenge, because it is. You know, when I moved, I'm in the safe house because housing is difficult here in Skidegate, and for the first 3 or 4 weeks, I was afraid. And so for that child part of myself, I said, okay, look, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go. There are 5 bedrooms in this house. So I'd get up and I'd go into every bedroom and look into every closet. And then I'd say to that part of myself, not to shame her or to guilt myself, but there, now can you rest? Now can you sleep? And I think that if I wouldn't be able to do this for myself if I didn't go into whatever it is, you know, in society and in my home that I grew up in. What I did was turn away from it. And now I know, well, it was because I was a child and I couldn't stop what was happening to me. So now as an adult, it's no longer, you know, I might feel myself turning away, and then just as I relax, then turning to whatever it is that's before me. But, you know, it's also deeply, for those of us that have experienced it repeatedly in childhood, whatever it is, we have to be patient and kind, you know. And I really most of the time, I appreciate learning about patience and kindness. Yeah.
What a beautiful metaphor to see the house, the home of our lives, and to think of if you're afraid of the closet, you don't avoid that room. You don't stay up all night suffering. You courageously look at that which you're afraid of. You open the closet door, you know, within yourself, and you look, what am I afraid? Oh, it's my child. It's the part of me that's still hurt. Well, let me just be here for a moment and look inside, and it's okay. And I think as fears arise, would you say that there is something to that being a metaphor of looking at that which we're afraid of, I imagine you in bed, you know, for that first time period, with stories running around and memories and flashes and creating stories of what could be, you know, similar to what we're doing now. What could happen? I don't know what the future holds. It's scary. But to then that part of you that had to at some point stand up, get out of bed, and then open the closets and say, I can't keep living like this. I have to figure out a way to not be afraid anymore. And the way I will do that is by looking at that which I'm afraid of.
Yeah. For myself, it isn't to say I can't. That's one of, because that's one of my childhood beliefs, is I can't. And, you know, the I can't help me to accept the reality. That's how it helped me. But then as an adult, well, I would say as an adolescent and as an adult, because it all stopped when I menstruated, when I started to menstruate, then the raping stopped. And so in my teen years and up until really just the last 7 years, the I can't has been a constriction for me. So I wouldn't say I can't. It's more about an acceptance that this is how it is. And I don't know how determination or how will would be with what I would say, but it's for me about connecting with that energy inside of self. You know, so the sweat lodge and the fasting lodge, my oldest brother Roy, he led me into this cleansing way, and I'm really grateful that he did, because I would say when I'm in the sweat lodge or the fasting lodge, that it is about going into an energy. And so there isn't really any concern about my inability. There's no worry about it, any of it, because I do have inabilities. It's more about being, and it's more about presence, and that energy that is about one heart, one mind, about being connected with the person to my right and to my left in the darkness, in the womb. So I think that that's where I am now. And I would say that ceremony in the feast hall and the sweat and fasting lodges have really helped me to look at being and going into, and not be so concerned about inability, because people will come my way, doors will open. Yeah.
So I see that becoming trust.
Yes.
Somewhere
yes.
is birthed through where all of the tendrils come together, and the life experiences and the birthing of trust that I would imagine replaces, eventually becomes the stronger fabric to hold where the lack of trust had burned through, you know.
Yeah, which is really about fear. and, you know, coming to see how much fear I've had in my life, understanding why, and you know, in meditation, how we go into it rather than trying to change it or bringing in a counter energy to make it go away, or all of these illusions, really, because it's only in going into it that we can connect to understand, and then it just changes, it transforms. Not because I make it happen, it just does.
It's bigger than you. The work is revealing itself. The support that you have is bigger than what you can bring intention to the table and then lean into us, because it's a larger network of support that you discover through. I imagine when you open those, when you allow that fear to, when you witness it and you allow yourself to disassemble it, and then somewhere inside that trust replaces it. It's very powerful. I'm keeping an eye on our time, Patricia, because at some point we're welcome this incredible circle. I see us all in a circle. Do you feel that way, Patricia? Like the whole group of us are sitting in this big circle together, and you're sharing your wisdom with us. But we will bring other voices into the circle soon. But I just thank you so much for this interview. Everything, I just feel my heart opening. And I think that brings us back to that question of what is non-duality? Where is this, how can we make sense of this, and where does it connect? Well, it's all connected. Anytime we bring the light of awareness to the disconnection, and our intention is to come together, I think we start to understand and experience non-duality just through the action of coming together. We start to have a more broad understanding of connection, and you're bringing such an authentic, powerful, and real conversation that is it's so powerful what it's offering people to just be real and to talk about the real stuff. But if you were to, we have this whole circle of us, 182 of us are sitting in this circle right now. And let's say that some of us are afraid, some of us are excited, some of us feel like this is going to help the planet Earth, this is what needs to happen. Some of us are being reminded of what it was like to be afraid and not have control as a child. Some of us are concerned of getting sick. Some of us feel strong. I mean, it's a dynamic circle of us sitting together. But within that, if we were all going to, if within this circle was a big garden bed that was just, the soil was placed and we were ready to plant seeds, and you were going to bring us something to place into the soil, something that we might all be able to understand, regardless of how we're having different experiences right now, what would you say? I mean, you could probably come up with a lot of things, and it may be hard to narrow it down to one, but if we were to plant seeds together, what would you say the intentions of those seeds might be? If each of those seeds held an intention, when we're all able to plant them together, what would you say it could be a shared intention for us to all hold?
Yeah, I think for me, as I look at non-duality, and I think of my father, so, you know, just recently I made a really deep connection with my mother. And by the way, that story of when she came to me, it was May the 12th. And May the 12th was the day she was born and the day she died. So I just thought that was pretty darn amazing and not a coincidence. And then I think for me, what my seed would be, having had that profound experience with my mother and feeling so much closer, even, you know, my perspectives of her last years have changed. I think when it comes to non-duality, I'm one with my father, who was diagnosed as a pedophile. And I would ask that great mystery, how am I one with my father? In what way am I one with my father? And I ask that question not with any kind of resistance, but with an openness, with fertile soil, knowing that the great mystery will reveal it to me. So, you know, what's wired together fires together, and I did do neurofeedback therapy for some time. That's how I came out of dissociative amnesia. Plus, another relative just gave me huge pieces of the puzzle and affirmed my childhood. So the horror. So I think that that's the greatest challenge for all of us. You know, where that distortion is that put us on a way of growing in a certain manner, that that I choose to forgive my father over and over again. And I mean, the other thing about being in the sweat lodge is there's no gender and there's no age. We're just energy. So you know, that's my prayer. That's my what I'm waiting for, is to have an understanding of that, and I know it will come. I know it will come, just though as it did with my mother, and so beautifully it will also with my father.
I think that essentially is non-duality, because when we see, if your father was seen as the villain, the problem, and you were seen as the one that experienced the problem, there is that deep separation. And I think what you're saying, the importance of forgiveness, would then be to say, where does your father carry this? Where was he similar to you being the victim? Where was he also the one that received the pain? You know, so that just the way that, what do I share with my father and what does he share with me? You know, like the non-duality of knowing that, you know, my father was abusive, and I realized, wow, he was abused. Like, oh, right, it's the fear and pain that it is without gender and without age. It's just, we're all embodying this pain that keeps getting passed around. And I think that is powerful, to say, what is it that we're afraid of? What is it that we feel so separated from? And then to say, what do we share with it, and what does it share with me? You know, that's to create that connection of oneness, like you speak of. Wow. Just feeling all of us in this circle right now, knowing that we all share so many similar stories, and what courage for each of us to come and join in the circle, and to be at a place where we are vulnerable and open enough to say, I am seeking connection, and I'm seeking wisdom in times of crisis, or I am hurting and I am ready. You know, I think that's, I am very moved by this, Patricia, and I can feel that we all are. This has been really profound. We have just a few more minutes before we will open up the circle for more dialogue. And I just, if you're comfortable just sharing what hope means to you, because you shared a little bit yesterday, and again, if we come full circle from where we started in the conversation of hope, and maybe this light beaming through that small hole that seems where the smoke is, to let that light come through. If you can share in what ways hope has been that light for you.
For me, it's like an energy that often will come up beside me, and it encourages. It's like, it's about a possibility. So really, when I went through treatment in 91 at the Meadows, that's when it started. Really, I look at it now, and it was changing my brain. The neuroplasticity began back in 91. And I think that as I look back, I see how hope has always been with me and been beside me. And sometimes I'm just, I'm busy and I'm doing this work, and I lose connection with it. And then when I see that life has gone gray for me, that's when I get quiet and I reconnect with it. It's like a really good buddy, really good companion.
Yeah, you're part of you, a twin, a soul connection within you. I would love to hear some. I'd love to welcome. Thank you, Patricia, you're just remarkable, and I'm so excited to have lunch and go on a hike with you after this. Zaya and Rachel, I want to welcome you back, if that feels comfortable, and to welcome. I could see, I'm listening to Patricia, but I could see little questions coming in, but I think you guys will help us navigate those questions.
Thank you, Patricia and Katie, for this hard opening, real human, tender, honest conversation. This is, Patricia, in your question, I think you really fully encapsulated, embodied non-duality. If we cannot find non-duality or oneness in our deepest wounds,
yes,
that's why mystics call those holy wounds. They're our gateway to our true nature. I would like to bring Katie
G, which is another Katie Gray circle. Katie. Yes.
Let's see.
Yes.
Katie Gray, DYU, Good Eagle Coming, DYU, Wap Liam Laha from the Ginahangi tribe of the Gispidwata clan from the Tsimshian Nation of Lekwalams, British Columbia. I'm on my mother's side, and I'm from the Dene Nation of Lutzel Kay, Northwest Territories on my father's side. My name is Katie Gray, really, and I was laughing when I can't even see you, Patricia, because I don't know why, but I hope that you're receiving this on my screen. But I was laughing when actually I really would like to see your face. I was chuckling when I saw that you're a Tsimshian woman and you're making way for me, and really wanna. There you are.
Hi.
I just really want to say Tuaksit Noon. I was granted a bursary to participate in this Science and Non-Duality conference, and I shared 2 days ago on trauma, and I shared about where my father came from, residential school. My grandma, from Lekwalams, she passed away, really young, and incest is in my family also, and I'm very blessed that it didn't happen to me, but I'm healing from that. I feel it in me, and it's stuff that I'm really having to work on. It's not mine, and so, sometimes, you know, I shared in the last one, you know, I'm 3 years sober, and I want to make a change for our people. I really have this big thing inside of me that, you know, this trauma and this pain that I lived in my life, I want to turn it out and I want to give it back now. And I want to do it not with just our teachings, but with Buddha. I went traveling the world. I've been blessed. I got to learn about Buddhism in Kathmandu. I learned about Hinduism at Ama's ashram in India this past year. And, you know, I'm floored by quantum physics, and I want to give, you know, and I want to change, and I just I want to connect with you. And I think that's all that I have to say. I'm really honored to see a Tsimshian woman here, you know, and my heart is big right now, very full, and you know, Buxin Noon, I really honor you. So,
Shaman, Anva, help me with your name, please. Unmute. You unmuted. Yes. Help me with your name, please. I would like to know how to.
I just put this name because, you know, I entered into the conference as a professional. So, but my name is Anjali.
Anjali.
Okay. And I want to say that I am so grateful for the space that has been opened and guarded so strongly by the ancestors of all of these women. It was like I didn't know exactly who was going to be featured in the talk, because that's not how women work. We come in a team. And I thought that it was just so remarkable and incredible to feel and see this type of leadership, stewarding this type of energy into a conference about science and non-duality. What a pertinent materialization right here and right now in front of us in regards to what this present, future, past of abundance and healing looks like. So it started with Victoria. I was like, wow, look at Victoria, what a force, my goodness. And then Katie came in and I was like, oh my gosh, Katie, wow. And then Katie introduced Patricia, and then Katie G, another Katie. I'm just like, wow, you know, the energy is just so powerful. And I've been teetering on crying or smiling, the biggest smile I've smiled in such a long time. My heart is racing, and the amount of energy and emotion that comes through just our sharing and vulnerability, I have so much gratitude to be here as a participant and a witness. And I don't even know if I need to share my comments, because what I wanted to say is that I love the metaphors that brings about that these indigenous means of healing. The smoke is an in-between state of matter. And I too am a survivor of sexual abuse. Before I committed to the path of shamanism, I was an art therapist, and I worked with an organization called A Long Walk Home. A Long Walk Home is a multi-structured organization that works with survivors in adolescence of their abuse. So many of the survivors are still in these situations. It's unbelievable, this work. I really would like to connect you, Patricia, to this organization as well. Katie, you as well, because they are people who teach education. The priority of healing is multi-tiered. So it's activism, education, and all of these things that work to stop the cycle that we were talking about, that you, Patricia, and I, as full-grown adults, have had to kind of retroactively do this work. And if we can get in here as warriors and stop it in its tracks, you know, I was so happy to work with this organization. And one of these things that I wanted to talk about was the biology. So we're talking about a womb. This is an organ that you can strip of any type of metaphysical meaning, right? Completely, the womb, and how our abuse in this specific organ has actually affected our entire multi-tiered consciousness, from the physicality to the metaphysicality, our very spirit, you know. So we talk about fear and shame and these things, and this comes from, like you spoke, Patricia, the root chakra malformation, because this is the first chakra that's being formed in our infancy. I too had the same problem. I can't believe the amount of analog structures that are happening in front of my eyes right now. And something that they were teaching these young women in A Long Walk Home was their biology. And they were the awareness of the womb structure, teaching them about their cycles and how to identify this part of their body that has been numbed and then co-opted and redefined by our society. And the cycles that our society treats and valorizes is cycles of trauma, you know. And I just wanted to say that this in-between state that comes from this healing of the sweat lodge and the idea of going back into the womb, and how indigenous structures and ways of being give value to these in-between states, is something that I see us coming back to. I don't want to say I hope we come back to it. We've come back to it right now. Look at this opportunity we've had. This is an absolute in-between state. Who's the leader here? Can anybody say who's the leader here in this circle? It doesn't work that way. Patricia is the leader, and I think she's the leader, isn't she? Because of the amount of courage that comes from speaking with the amount of tranquility about the situation. I hope one day that I can do the same about my story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm on the path. I'm on the path to doing it. And I, just like Katie, I am so thankful that this leader has manifested.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Angelica. Thank you for your beautiful words and where they come from such a alive place. And yeah, you're transmitting your heart. Yeah, so beautifully.
Thank you, thank you. Before we go to another question, I want to just take an opportunity to ask Patricia. You know, we just heard from these two young women, and I'm wondering, with your work in your community, like, what's happening to the young people in your community?
Right. So when I've gone to do any kind of work with them, so one was meditation, and just talked a little bit about it, how they could watch their thoughts, and you know, they were talking and just kind of ridiculing and blah blah blah, you know. And then I gave the instructions, and they sat through the 6 minutes just watching the thought go by. And the young men were the first ones to talk. And it's like, holy shit, you know, didn't know that I could do that I could watch thought arise and go by. And they were so watching the simplest of things, they take it and they just go so deeply with it. But you know, right now, what Katie was speaking to is how it's not mine, and I would say, like, that's the biggest challenge for our youth right now. You know, like they inherit it in their nervous system, and then try to make sense of it, and it doesn't make sense. So at least not in a cognitive way. making sense of it is first needing to hear your parents and grandparents speak the truth. Then it'll make sense to the youth, you know. And I know in a traditional way, we're the ones who are responsible for the youth. And what's happening through health programs is they're making youth responsible for youth, when really traditionally that's not how we do it. We're responsible first. I'm responsible for me. Then I can step in to offer you something. But that probably is one of the challenges that I have, is how to speak to that. But I would say the youth need us, you know, grandparents and parents, to be truthful, compassionately truthful about life, and any questions that they have, that we answer them. So that's where I see it is for youth right now.
Thank you. Zaya and Mauricio.
Thank you, Victoria, for this beautiful question. Patricia, is there anything you can tell this community? How can we, some of us who have privilege, how can we be of support of your work, your community?
Thank you for that question. I think I know how I work is I'll talk about the work that we're doing. And so neurofeedback therapy helped me tremendously. And as did the sweat lodges, because of my history, I needed a lot of different modalities to help my soul and my heart. So what we're working at now is here in Haida Gwaii, I'm looking at founding all that we do in the way of intervening for sexual abuse on ancestral principles. So I think that, you know, for me, I couldn't answer that question for you, or for anyone else. I think because my personhood, I tend to just, you know, dive in and plow forward. But it's an important question, and that you're putting forward to me. And I believe that how the healing happens is as we work together, you know. And thank you for this opportunity to speak to not only the suffering in our families and our homes, but also the resources that our ancestors have left us and that are in the land, you know, around us all. You know, they're around you where you are, right? Indigenous people, wherever you are, they have had for thousands of years a connection to the land where you live. And I appreciated Katie before, in our conversation yesterday, she was really concerned about how she introduced me, and I was trying to understand her fear. And so what I did is I just sent her a map of the nations and how we're organized on the coast. And, you know, just her asking that, and then me being able to send her some information, it did something for her and I. And I think that we need more in the way of this kind of dialogue. You know, we need to be talking more about what can be done. In the 2 trauma training programs that I developed, that was for the province, and I was employed by First Nations Health Authority at the time. And what I did is I took what Peter Levine, his work, I went through the SC training. So I took that, and I took from the Meadows Treatment Center what helped me there. And then I had 2 men who had gone through Indian residential school and were sober from Alkali Lake. They were working with me. There are a number of us, all of us Indigenous, working together to offer group therapy, art therapy, and just the neurobiology of trauma. And it was just that simple. And we had a profound result from it. You know, how can something like that be offered everywhere? So, so it's not just to a certain number. So by the fourth 3-week program that we offered, we had 2 people who drove to where we were in hopes that somebody couldn't make it. They weren't on the waiting list. They actually showed up. So that's when I was thinking, you know, they shouldn't have to do that though. Yeah. No one should be turned away. But
no one should be turned away from hell.
No.
And it's so precious also. Tomorrow we have a beautiful speaker, Francis Whaler, who brings the element of grief. And really, we have forgotten also how to grieve and how to be in community.
Yes.
And something he says about trauma healing, he says, you know, soldiers, after they came back from war with PTSD, they applied many different trauma therapies, and they had about 25-30% success. But when they were introduced to ritual, to sweat lodges, to community, immediately went to 80%. I mean, I hate to use percentages, but that's what the research uses. It's incredibly, this is where true healing happens. And
yes. Yeah, because we're looking at the spiritual then, because we say when a traumatic event happens, a part of our soul breaks away and is in that geographic location. So sometimes what the elders would do is actually, if they could, take them back to where they almost drowned. Sometimes they would put them back into the water. So they would holler for their own soul to come back, but would be lifted out, you know, because there would be someone there. So it's about soul loss and soul retrieval. And I think in a sweat lodge, that's what we're always doing when we write, when we go and we pray those prayers, we're bringing something back to our heart, you know, and we're letting go of things that weigh us down.
Which is very Peter Levine work in a way, to bring you back to the source, and with titration in smaller, and with it, when you know you're safe, but try to go back slowly as much as you can handle to your trauma and come out.
And this weaves back to what Pat McCabe said at the beginning. What we are doing here, we are really remembering. This is remembering, a process of really coming back to remembering ourselves, who we are.
Yeah. And I love it when they put that hyphen between and membering.
Yes.
You know, because we've been dismembered.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Reconnecting, our body into a unity.
Yes.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions. I want to thank you again, Elder Patricia Vickers, for taking all and using your body and your experiences as a way of creating the path forward for all of us, and integrating all of these learnings into a new path. So, and Katie, I would like to give you the last word for, closing us out before we go into a break. And I just want to say one more thing, is that if anyone needs additional support to maybe speak to a therapist, or just need someone, we do have a list of people that we recommend. So please send us an email and we'll get that information to you. This is work, and I like what you said, Elder, I just want to call you Elder Vickers. I like what you say in terms of like the soul retrieval, being dunked and being, there's someone that needs to be there to like pull you back. This work needs to be done in community. It's not the work to be done alone. So thank you for that. And Katie, I'll turn it over.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you for the long journey. It wasn't just turning on your Zoom. It was 30 years of cleansing, and before that it was decades of experiencing, and what has brought you to be a tree of wisdom. I think of wisdom being a tree that just grows naturally and gets bigger and bigger, and you are a profound tree that is bringing us shade from the burn of our fears, and bringing us fruit of inspiration. So thank you for all the work that you have done. And I also want to thank the whole, because this is a unique experience, us being online together. I want to thank Ronald for running sound, and Lisa for keeping the chat going, and being on the inside of this conference, being on the backside, knowing how many dozens of people are racing around to make sure that we can sit here and have this experience. So thank you to the SAND team for being the engineers and the minds and the running back and forth, and to know that each of us are a part of this big circle, and it expands more than the 162 of us, that it's many that are holding this space and working so that we can receive the wisdom from someone like Patricia June Vickers. So thank you everyone that came, and may we be inspired to not just speak about ways of change, but to give ourselves permission to be with the truth, and to be as courageous as Patricia in her ability to walk the path of non-duality, and to see all of her wounds as the stepping stones forward. So thank you. This is a courageous group of beings, and with so much love, and I really appreciate us all gathering together in this way. So circle continue.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. And just before we go, I also want to let you know that Katie is not just this incredible being that can lead those profound conversations, but also she's an amazing artist, and her partner have offered a beautiful concert for us, which will be available tonight. From their own land, from nature. They bring their beautiful music, poetry, and presence. Please enjoy them. Don't miss Sea Stars. The name of their band is Sea Stars.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Big hugs to everyone.